Yo, what's up guys, my name is Everman and welcome back to another video on my channel. So for today's video, together with WIldVibes, I've created a full-length progressive house template with royalty-free vocals, which I'll be explaining to you guys in this video. So let's dive right into the FLP. So yeah, this is what the FLP looks like, and you can buy this one. Just check out the first link in the description for that. But yeah, so in this video, I will show you how I created this one together with WIldVibes. And I think the best way to actually start this little tutorial is to just play you the entire template that we have created from intro to outro. So let's check this out. Let's go.
You're the only air I can breathe when I'm standing on the edge. You're the melody in my head that I cannot forget. You're the only air I can breathe when I'm standing on the edge. For you.
Alright, so this is what the template sounds like. And I'm gonna start explaining the song by starting with the drop, because I think drop is always the most important part in a progressive house song. So we're gonna start with that part first. And as you can see, we gave each section in the song its own color, like each sort of group. So for example, the leads and the automation clips for the leads are all blue. Then we have the whole chord section down here, which is like teal. Then we have our bass line and the automations, etc., which is green. Then down here, everything which yellow is our samples for the drums, like the kick drum, snare, some claps, etc. But I will explain these later. Then the orange samples are all like FX sounds. So you can really see, like, especially FX sounds, there's quite a lot of those sounds in this template. And then down here we have the vocal section. So for the vocals, we used vocals from Splice, but I'm also going to talk about the vocals later. Then down here we have like an ambient section with some like really like sounds that are in the background, just adding like the last 5% to the song. But let's start with the top. So let me play you the leads solely, and they sound like that. So yeah, let's check out the individual layers. So for the leads, I usually like to use Spire a lot, and that's also like for the first layer I use Spire. So we got 2 Spire leads, then we have a Nexus one, then we got this sound right here, which is a staccato string sound. I'm a big fan of these sounds. I really like to use these staccato strings for the leads because I think they give a really nice character to your leads. Then we have another string sound. This one is from the native Flex plugin from FL Studio. Then we have, I have no clue how you actually pronounce this, tubas. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation. Sounds like that. Then we have, last but not least, another Nexus layer, and this one is a piano. So yeah, solely they sound like that. So these are all the layers for the leads. As you can see, we used 7 layers in this case. So it depends always, like, you don't necessarily need to use like 7 or 10 or something. I kind of always say that the less layers you take, the better, because then it's easier to mix them down and to process them, because the more stuff you have, the more stuff you need to take care of, obviously. So I always try to actually choose as little layers as possible. Let's also take a look at the processing for the leads. So what I always do is I route all of the leads to one bus channel, so that I can basically process them all on one channel. So I don't need to put the same reverb or the same EQ or the same sidechain on 7 individual channels. But what I did is I layered the layers 4, 5, and 6 to a separate layer, because with those I wanted to do separate EQing. So with those 3 layers, I basically wanted to boost the high end a bit. But then obviously I also routed those to the bus channel. So I always start with some EQing on the bus channel. And in this case, it's very detailed EQing. It's just about listening, and you just have to check what's kind of missing with the leads. Also, I always take an analyzer as a helping tool on my master channel. I always put the span on here, and then I double check like the frequency response and also the stereo width. So that's a great tool. So then we have a low and a high cut. I always low cut my leads at around 200 hertz roundabout, you can say. High cut at 16k hertz. Then we have another EQ. So I just felt like they had a little bit too much around the 500 hertz. So I took these out a bit. Then we have a balance for volume automation, basically some stereo enhancing to make them wider. Some reverb. So I always set up a P controller for my reverb in order to automate the wet signal, because I don't want to have the wet signal stuck at one level. So it basically looks like that when a track plays. So as you can see, it's being automated by its own dry signal, basically, that goes into the P controller. Then we have a low pass filter for the automation. Basically in the build up, I always use a filter to introduce the leads in the build up. Then we have some basic sidechain, first preset from Nicky Romero Kickstart at 50%. And that's pretty much it with the leads. And by the way, let me actually open up the span on the master channel, so that you can also see kind of what the leads look like on the span in this case. And then you can sort of apply this same frequency curve and the stereo width to your leads as well, as, you know, just to give you a reference for your own songs. So let me just play the leads solely with span, open up, and just check how it looks. As you can see, kind of the frequency that's popping out the most is around, or in between 1 and 2K, you can say. And this is always kind of the most important, or yeah, basically the loudest area, you can say. This one should always be the loudest in the analyzer. And then with the high end, I usually have it sitting somewhere between the -30 mark and the -36 mark. And then basically with the lows, I always like roll them or have them rolled off a bit, so that the 200 hertz range is not as loud as like the 1 or 2K hertz range, because that would be way too much for those lower frequencies. And that's pretty much it already. So then let's check out our drop chords. So basically we have several layers also for the chords, obviously. So I call this first one synth chords, sounds like that. So that's a basic saw layer, you can say. So I have two layers for that one. This one is just, you know, the init preset tweaked a bit with some DG on and stuff. Then also the second one is like the Martin Garrix preset that a lot of people use for progressive house. Gives a nice sort of character for the chords. Also for the processing, there's nothing too special. It's just an EQ on here to cut out the lows, to make room for the bass line. And then I routed those to actually my mid-bass bus channel. So I will show these effects when we're talking about the bass line. But let's continue with our other chord layers. So we have some pianos. This one gives kind of a more emotional vibe to the chords, I would say. And for the pianos, it's actually just one layer, so it's just one piano, and it's this amber ambient piano. Then we have some strings also for the chords. So for the leads we use staccato strings, and for the chords I usually like to use sustained strings. You can actually also use staccato strings for the chords, but yeah, in this case I use those for the leads, and then I have sustained ones for our chords basically, and I also used flex for those. And then we have one more layer for the chords, but this one is only used in the break, so I will show that one later also. Then let's talk about the bass line. So this one sounds like that. So with the bass line, I always split it up into several layers also, but the first one is always a sub bass. Then I have several mid basses that provide the mids and highs, and the sub bass obviously only provides the sub bass. And the reason for that is that it makes it easier to balance the bass line with our other elements, because you have separate control over your actual bass, and then with the mid basses you can give your bass line their actual character, because if you only have a sub bass, you won't hear your bass line on like your phone or something, and the sub bass, like, you don't actually hear it, you kind of feel it when you're in a club, or you know, when you're listening to the song on proper speakers. So that's basically the intention behind that. And for the bass line in this track, we have one sub bass and two mid basses. So for the sub bass, I use also a preset from the Spyro plugin, Saw Bass it's called. Let's also check out the processing real quick. So we have just a high cut on this one to get rid of the highs, because again, we only want the lows in the sub bass. It's basically being activated by this automation right here. So that's basically what the tape stop does. And we have obviously sidechain for the bass line. And then some balance for volume automation. Then the two mid basses are also from Spyro. This one is the Z bass preset, and then this one is the growl preset. Then I have those two routed to kind of my mid bass bass channel. So on here I also have like a low roll off thing going on to, you know, make room for the sub obviously, because below this area, that's basically where the sub is sitting. And then we have also a high roll off to not have the mid basses sound too sharp, and to also create room for like our rides and for the leads and also for the chords a bit. So then again, we also have the deep blue tapes up on the mid basses. Then I made them wider actually a bit, because with the sub bass, make sure you keep that one in mono, but you can actually keep the mid basses wide. Then we have this gated preset from Grassbeat, and this one, you know, creates this sort of chopped up, more rhythmic character for the mid basses. Then again, we have a low pass filter for automation. Then again, the sidechain, also Nick Romero kickstart, and again, balance for volume automation. So then we have, yeah, the whole drum section already. So yeah, let me show you all of the drums. So this is basically the kick drum here at the top. Then I have a clap. Then in the second half, I have more claps on every second kick. Then I also have like some toms, another ride. Then we have like one crash and a reverse crash. Then in the second half again, we have some hi-hats and like a shaker kind of loop. Then we have these fill sounds down here, and these usually are, you know, used quite commonly in progressive house because they kind of work really well with the energy. Like they really help to make the drop a bit more interesting, basically. Then we have all the downlifters. That's basically then it with the drum section for the drop. And that's actually also already it with, yeah, all of the things that are used in the drop. So there's nothing left, only like the snare in the middle of the drop. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the drop. So then let's actually start with the first breakdown next. So yeah, as I already said at the beginning, the vocals are from Splice, and these sound like that. So basically have one like verse part of the vocals, and then we have one chorus part.
Melody in my head that I cannot forget.
And then the chorus part. Yeah, as you can tell, I also used a vocoder in the chorus, also in the second break. So yeah, let's check out the processing for the vocals real quick. So also on our vocal bus, we have some EQing first to kind of define the range that we want to have the vocal play in. Then again, a balance for volume automation. Then we have a compressor. So the vocals were already compressed, so we didn't need to do a whole lot of compression, but just a tiny bit to kind of really, you know, make them sit nicely in the mix. And then again, we have our P controller with the reverb. And yeah, for the reverb, basically I have like a decay time of 2.2 seconds here. And then what I usually like to do on the vocals, I increase the damping quite a bit, and also boosting the low cut a bit to kind of reduce the lows a bit and then the reverb. But that's then already it with the vocals, so there wasn't really much work needed with the vocals because again, they were already processed. Then what I did is I created this reverse kind of fade in into the chorus vocal part. You know, it just helps to make the transition a bit smoother. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the vocal, except for the vocoder. So let me also show you how I did that. So for the vocoder, I basically have the chords that we use in the break, which look like that, by the way. And for those, I also used Silent One. So this one's also the Martin Garrix preset. And I routed this one to channel 21. And this one is routed to 22. And 22 is basically like the vocoder bus. And the vocals, the actual vocals are also routed to the vocoder bus channel. So we have the synth plus the vocals, both routed to this channel. And on here we have the vocodec. So this one basically, it kind of makes both sounds to one, the synth and the vocals. And yeah, in this one I basically just messed around a bit with the settings, like mainly with these knobs right here, with this one, the bands and the bandwidth basically. So these are like the three main knobs. And what you also need to do is to set these to 1 and 2 to have the vocoder working. And then I just got rid of the highs in the vocoder to not have those too sharp. And it just also kind of puts them behind our actual vocals. So yeah, that's it with the vocals. And that is pretty much already it. Like these two sounds, the bass and the chords, already make like 80% of the break, except the vocals, of course. So yeah, the organ sounds like that. And also, as you can see, at the beginning of the break, we actually have long notes, like the chords are 2 bars long. And this basically also creates some more variation in the song. It kind of creates this very calm beginning of the song. And then the chords basically get, or the length of the notes get shorter, and you basically create like more tension and energy to build up the energy in the song towards the build up and drop. So for the organ, we used also the plugin that I use for the staccato strings on the leads. So it's actually called Brazilian Chamber Orchestra 2, by the way, if you want to check it out. It's also free, I believe. Then we have our bass line. So yeah, for the bass line, it's the same notes that we have in our organ chords, basically. Like it's just the bass notes, obviously, that we pick for the bass line. And then the presets are the same from the drop, so I use the same layers for also in the break. Sometimes I use different sounds or different layers for the bass line and the break, but in this case I just ended up using the same bass line for the break as well. So the only difference is that we have the filter closed down, as you can tell, so we only have those nice lows to not have the bass line clash with the vocals, basically. Yeah, then we just have some more FX sounds to, you know, really create smooth transitions in the song. So we have some, like 2 impacts, basically, and then we have 2 downlifters. Nothing too special with these. And then we have some ambient sounds, so these basically just add some, like more harmonics to the background. And again, they just kind of fill up those last 5% in the break. And so then 8 bars later, I'm introducing the leads, basically also using a filter. So I only have the piano here actually, but then again 8 bars later we're dropping into the build up, and then I'm starting to introduce all layers for the leads. So yeah, I'm opening up the filter towards the drop, and I've also automated the dry reverb level to help make the transition a bit more special, kind of. Yeah, then I'm also introducing the chords from the drop, basically, that I already showed you, using the same techniques like with the filter and stuff. What I'm doing is I'm fading out the bass line actually to get rid of the bass before the drop, and this creates more impact when the drop hits. Then we have some drums in the build up, so we basically have the kick that I looped up as well as a snare. Then we also got this like faster snare loop. And then again, we got our crash and the downlifters that I already showed you, and some more uplifters to create more tension in the build-up, basically. So at the top, I also got 2 automations for the master channel. And the first one is basically an endless smile automation. So this one kind of creates I always call it washed out effect in the build up, because it adds reverb and it also gets rid of a bit of the lows, and it basically creates like this washed out type of sound, which is really cool to have right before the drop. And I'm basically also lowering the volume just a little bit to, again, have more impact when the drop hits. So that's it with the break and the build up. And yeah, obviously the drop, I already showed that one. Yeah, then in the second break, we're back again using the long notes for the chords to create this more relaxed feeling again in the break. And then we're basically starting to build the tension all over again. So we're adding a kick drum then later on in the next 8 bars in the second break. Also the bass line. I'm also introducing this ride by using volume automation.
I can breathe when I'm standing on the edge for you.
And then we're basically dropping again into the chorus. The main differences here are that I have some more like FX sounds in that part, and I also have the leads already in there. I'm also having the bass line a bit louder than in the first break, sorry. But these are basically the main differences. And then we're basically dropping again into the drop, which is basically the same as the first drop. So that's pretty much it with this template, you can say. So let me actually also show you the mastering real quick, because that's also something which like important or interesting to show maybe. So first of all, we have the endless smile that I already mentioned, just for the build up to create that automation. And then the balance is for the volume automation, the build up, and then we basically just have a limiter. And that's pretty much it. So there's nothing fancy here on the master. Obviously the span that I showed you for just to like double check the frequency spectrum and the stereo width. But that's pretty much it with this template. So again, check out the first link in the description to buy this one. The presets and the samples are obviously all included. And again, as you can see, we also consolidated all patterns. So there should be no problems if like any plugins don't work or stuff. You still have like the stuff bounce out. But yeah, that's it. I hope you liked this FLP that I made together with WIldVibes. Also check out his socials that are linked down in the description. I hope you liked this video. Make sure to comment with your feedback. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video.